Thank you for staying with us. It's been an eventful weekend for the people of Rivers State as the Supreme Court nullified the local government elections conducted by the state-owned Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission on October the 5th, 2024. In the same light, the Apex Court also restored a judgment of a Federal High Court, which last year restrained the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the Federation from releasing funds from the Federation accounts to the government of Rivers State. Despite the governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara, adhering to this order, it has sparked various debate as to whether proper investigations were done before this ruling. Well, joining us via Zoom for this conversation is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Adekunle Ojo. We also have a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Fred Nzako. Good morning, gentlemen. It's good to have you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me begin with you, senior advocate. There are concerns or controversies around this verdict passed by the Supreme Court. Perhaps you can give us a better insight as to it. There are those who are still wondering what the interpretation of this verdict means, really, and has it really laid to rest every other controversy surrounding these matters in Rivers State?
Well, as we all know, the Supreme Court is a policy decision-making court, and being the final arbiter on every issue that arises in our court, they have decided some far-reaching, far-fetching issues. And except one wants to deceive himself, that remains the position of the law as we speak now. They have been able to lay to rest this controversy over, maybe once again, the autonomy of the local government, and they have emphasized that there is a need for adherence to the law in putting in place the administrators of the local government, I mean the chairman and the councillors, that they have succeeded in doing. And again, they have re-emphasized that irrespective of your feeling, your sentiments, your emotions, judgments of court are to be obeyed at all costs, whether you like it or not. And again, you see, they have emphasized that the separation of power must be observed by all parties. You see, they went as far as they as telling the sitting governor of Rivers State that what he did by demolishing the House of Assembly, part of it, was wrong, and so many other things, so many other infractions that they accused him of. So I think, I mean, I think they have gone ahead to tell us once again that, look, when issues arise, we have a Supreme Court that has an attitude that is able to form opinion at every point in time and restore peace. Yes, there might still be misinterpretations here and there, but by and large, decision has been made, and one of which is that, look, the Amefule of a month, I can't remember the other, Martins Amefule is still the Speaker of Rivers State House of Assembly, and to that extent, whatever you do outside the 26 lawmakers remain void. So they have been able to lay this to rest. So people are still arguing whether the issue of defection has been determined or not. Yes, by and large, the Supreme Court might not have come out to say, yes, we have determined this. But then, to some of us, it might remain like maybe perhaps a mere people just trying to argue issues. It might remain mere arguments, because basically the substance has been taken off, and that is to say that this man remains the Speaker of Rivers State, and that the House of Assembly must be carried along. He must resume sitting, and the House of Assembly comprising the 26 must be carried along in everything, especially the appropriation bill. You cannot do an appropriation without the House of Assembly. And they said what the other man determined, what the four decided, cannot be binding on 26. So I think by and large, they have been able to restore some sort of hope in the separation of power that we practice in constitutionalism, so that let everybody do what they are supposed to do and do it according to the law.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Leonard Silk Adekunle Ojo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for your time on the program. Let's quickly move over now to Fred Nzako, who is a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Good morning, Mr. Nzako. Are you there?
Thank you. I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, Mr. Nzako, let me be the one that throws this question at you. A lot of people are saying that it's strange that the governor of Rivers State has adhered to the judgment, and he has even given out directives that the chairman should step down and so on. People are saying maybe he has one trick or the other he's going to play tomorrow. What is your take on that?
Well, it shouldn't be strange to anybody that the governor decided to obey the Supreme Court judgment or orders because the governor was elected by the people and under the constitution. And in a civil democracy, one is expected to obey the lawful orders of court, especially that of appeals court. What should even rather be strange to people is the judgment itself, in the sense that the judgment in one fell swoop handled almost three issues. One, the issue of local government election that was conducted on the 5th of October last year. Two, the issue of resource allocation to Rivers State, not just the local government allocation, but also the state allocation. And three, the issue of the return of Martin Amwewula-led State House of Assembly. This is even where it becomes worrisome, because I do not know what was taken to the Supreme Court that would have led the Supreme Court to give all these orders, using one broom to solve all the problems. And whether the problems have been solved is also another issue, because I do not think that the problems have been solved. We say in law that the court is not a Father Christmas, and whether the Supreme Court acted as a Father Christmas in this case, we are yet to see. And those are the worrisome aspects of it. And the issue of whether the revenue accruing to Rivers State will continue to go to Rivers State is another worrisome aspect of it, because the court has not determined simplicity the status of the 27 lawmakers that defected. And by the Supreme Court judgment, it looks as if the issue has been settled. Whether those such issues will be settled by consequential orders of the Supreme Court on account of a major issue of appropriation, because what was taken to the Supreme Court was the issue of appropriation. Whether it was right for this governor to be spending the money of Rivers State without, in quotes, appropriation of the House. And then whether it was appropriated or not is also a legal issue, because the bill was presented before the House of Assembly. Now the issue is who and who were members of the House of Assembly when the bill was presented. It's a whole gamut of issues, which of course, I do not think that this judgment of the Supreme Court has solved all the problems. Rather, it has even created some problems for the politics, because except if the governor and the producers, and if the governor and the opposing side come to a round table, talk to themselves, decide on what to do, keep away politics, and then bring in the interests and issues of rivers to the front burner, I tell you that even the wider Nigerian society will not be spared of the consequences of the issues happening in Rivers State.
And that's where concerns have been raised. Some Nigerians have been raising concerns about this matter being laid to rest in its totality and the gray areas that you have rightly pointed out. I'm wondering from your perspective how this would impact governance in the state moving forward, because this was a test of our laws and every other things around it. If you look at the role of the judiciary in trying to address this matter, but if it has not resolved it, where then lies the hope of the people now?
That is the issue. That is what we're talking about, that we should keep aside politics and unnecessary politicking and think for the future and the welfare of the people. In the first instance, the law says you should hold local government election. The governor has held local government election. Supreme Court has nullified it. The law says Rivers State must get its own allocation as a federating unit in the country. Meanwhile, a large chunk of the money being shared comes from River State and from all other states that are oil-bearing states. Now, the same River State will no longer get money from federation account, except they do certain things, which of course are anchored on politics. The third thing is, if the Supreme Court has, in a manner of speaking, restored Matarame Wule, does it now mean that Supreme Court is not aware that Matarame Wule and 26 others defected? Does it now mean that the court is not aware that there is an affidavit lying in a federal high court about their defection? Does it mean that the Supreme Court will now close its eye and say, no, these are not defectives? Does it now mean that the governor himself would have presented the appropriation bill before people who ordinarily, by the provision of the Constitution, are no longer members of the House? Therefore, I say that all these things have not been rested fully. But the only thing that can rest it, if answering your question directly, is if the gladiators in this matter consider the issues and the welfare of the state, swallow their ego and eat their humble pie, and they try to come back to wherever they were before all the problems started. And that means that even the move to impeach Sim Fubra, which has led him to run helter-skelter in defense of his position or his mandate and his seat, that has led to all this hullabaloo, then those who are itching to impeach him should also drop the idea, and Rivers can come back as a whole. If they continue to politic and want to push the man out, then the problem will be settled. I can tell you that may be the beginning of greater problems and greater challenges, because the people of Rivers have been divided into fragments of interests and opinions, and to bring everything close together again will take a lot of wisdom and a lot of politicking to help the system.
Mr. Nzako, let me just stay with you for a bit. You mentioned something that is critical, and I also want you to perhaps expatiate on it, talking about a political solution being the way forward to addressing this matter now. Recall that when this whole issue began, the president tried to step in to perhaps resolve it, but that didn't work. We saw elder statesmen come in to also resolve it. That did not work until the courts were left to decide on what would happen now. And here you are again saying, despite the courts trying to resolve this matter, a political solution is still needed here. With what you have seen leading up to this point, do you think that these persons will be willing to swallow their ego and resolve these matters critically in the best interest of the people?
The court resolution was not comprehensive enough, because the status of the campaigns had not been completely handled. The matter is still lying in the court of in the federal high court. It has not gained the traction and the speed expected of such a matter of urgent state importance, of course, by extension, urgent national importance. We expected that the speed with which that matter was handled should have been faster than what we are seeing. But the other aspects of the imbroglio have gained a lot of traction. There was a local government election on October 5. It has gotten to even the determination by Supreme Court in February, 4 months after that election. That tells you that it has received a lot of speed. The issue of resource allocation, Supreme Court has given a judgment that there is no allocation will go to any local government that is wrong with a caretaker. Now, what is going to happen in Rivers today is, how are you going to restore the local government leadership? Are you going to restore the ones whose tenure had ended, or are you going to ask the state to run without elected local government officials? Now, the governor has said, let the heads of local government be in charge. What it now means is that with the heads of local government being in charge, will the funds go to local government in Rivers, or will it still continue to be withheld? These are the critical questions that this court order has not solved. And the issue again that started the whole problem, which was the issue of defection. Yes, does it mean that Mohammed will now go back without court determining his status? I personally blame the People's Democratic Party, because it was their inaction or their commission that had led to some of this. Because if the PDP had stood their ground, I mean, in terms of politicking, then transit to the ground to say these men they are no longer members of our party, then it would have been easier for the court at the lower court to decide. But PDP at the national level trying to play unnecessary dirty politics that they are playing. They went ahead and told the court at the high court level that the men were still their members. When the men ran back, when they found out that the constitution had caught up with them on account of defection. But even with that, the issue of defection, if anybody begins to serve to tell Nigerians that those men did not defect, then we are playing politics of falsehood, which is a very terrible thing to do in a democracy that we have the younger ones to look up to the elder ones for the future. And if there will be any other solution that will come on account of this, I expected that the court should be expedited to take a decision one way or the other on the fate of those men, so that the governor himself will know who he is dealing with. Now we have been forced to go and present the appropriation to an assembly of majority that have defected. There was an argument by many that when they defected that when you're talking about the issue of two-thirds, you're talking about two-thirds of what was left and not two-thirds of what would have been. Now we are talking about it is wrong in all manner of speaking to say that only 4 people will receive an appropriation bill in a state. So what it now means is that there wouldn't have been a presentation of the appropriation bill, which again will be against the provision of the Constitution. So all this confusion in Rivers State, one expected that the court would have, one way or the other, extended the action on the very core and critical issue of defection, which of course would have solved every other challenge.
All right, Mr.
That is the decision of the Supreme Court. It cannot be appealed against. We are not criticizing it, but we are saying that the matters are yet to be rested.
All right, Mr. Nzako, you have really opened a whole lot of things that a lot of Nigerians didn't see. I mean, those of us that are not lawyers, we did not see some of the things that you have pointed out. At the end of the day, we have more questions now than answers. And you have tried to explain how these things could be done. Where does the common man in Rivers State stand in the whole of all this?
Well, that is the problem. The interest of the common man is trashed, is put in the trash bin by the politicians who are only looking at one, their interest, their position, their welfare, their ego, their control, their power, and the rest of them, sidelining the common man. The common man is the man who has stood under the rain and under the sun to voting the leaders. Now they are being given the short end of the knife by the leaders that they elected. So everything that must be done must put into consideration the interest of the people. And who are the people? If the civil servant having worked for 30 days does not receive his salary, if the teacher having worked for 30 days does not receive his salary, because money did not flow from the federation account, at this point, you can now see who is bearing, who are now the grasses that suffer where 2 elephants are fighting. So I expected that every court, from High Court to the Supreme Court, should consciously look into the issues in Rivers State. I've said this time to that number, and expedite actions and say what they should say. This particular one that has caught the problem at the apex, yet leaving the body politics unresolved, will not solve the problem. I keep saying that. And that will further mess up the judiciary, because I see problems still coming in Rivers State. I see problems coming in Rivers State.
That gives me some concern, because the fact that the governor adhered to the judgment and all that gave some of us the impression that, okay, so we might have some peace in Rivers State. But with all these questions and with what you've just said about having more problems in the future in Rivers State, that gives us some concern. Let's look at the judgment again. What was taken to the Supreme Court? How come the Supreme Court gave judgment on 3 different items? Is it normal? Is it a normal procedure that the Supreme Court will want to take care of other issues that are around the major issue that was brought to them? Is it normal?
Well, it is what we say, the Supreme Court, when you bring matter before the Supreme Court, of course, don't forget that matters that come before the Supreme Court are issues that have been dealt with by the Court of Appeal. And then the Supreme Court will either affirm or set aside the judgment of the Court of Appeal. What were the issues that came before the Court of Appeal? The essential issue that came was the issue of appropriation. Whether or not it was right for the governor to continue to spend the money of Rivers State for the people of Rivers without due appropriation. And what do you call due appropriation? Without the appropriation by the entire House of Assembly. And what is the entire House of Assembly? Did it include those that have defected? Let's keep that aside. Now, the Supreme Court can give consequential orders, which we can call secondary orders. The primary orders will be on issue that was brought before it. The secondary orders will be what we call consequential orders. But these are issues that are so weighty and that are the base of the problems in Rivers that cannot be treated as consequential orders. And that is why I say that the court is not a Father Christmas, and it is now very good give consequential orders on issues that are so strong and so giant should have emanated from the High Court up to the Court of Appeal down to the Supreme Court. So if anybody begins to say, oh, the Supreme Court has been restored, Matarame will leadership, there was no basic pronouncement on that. There was not. What the Supreme Court says is that the local government election was nullified. And what was the reason for nullifying the local government election? Because of the fact that there was a court which says, do not hold the election. There was another order of court, of the same court, that said, go ahead and hold the election. We should not lose sight of all this. When two courts say the same thing, court of other jurisdiction say different things, then the matter should not be solved at the level of the Court of Appeal before it now moves to the Supreme Court. But the issue of local government election was sidetracked. Court of Appeal had never made any order on that, and the Supreme Court jumped into it. The issue of resource allocation. What will make the resources of Rivers not to come to them? If you send that of local government, the Supreme Court is now appropriating and reprobating. Because the Supreme Court said in the issue of local resource allocation, and AGF versus the taxing state of the country, that any state that does not conduct local government election should not receive allocation for each local government. Now there was an election conducted. The issue of that election has not been tracked. And the Supreme Court says, do not allow money to go to Rivers. So that tells you that Supreme Court overreached itself in this orders and in this judgment. And that is where I foresee a lot of problems. Because if the matters had followed due process of law, a lot of these issues would have been placed at the Court of Appeal before moving up to the Supreme Court. Yes, time is of the essence, and that is why the judiciary must help the democracy, and it has always done, to ensure that there is an expected action on all these matters, so that once a decision is taken, it becomes final. I tell you that this Supreme Court judgment is final on paper, but in practice, I'm afraid that it may not be final. And if it is not final in practice, then it has not solved the problems that we always hope that Supreme Court orders are judged to solve.
Mr. Anzako, there are more questions than answers, obviously, and what the Supreme Court or our legal system is meant to do is to interpret the laws, ensure some level of clarity as against making things questionable at the end of the day. So I'm wondering how this perhaps position the judicial system in our democratic society to addressing issues of this nature, because Nigerians have been asking, what kind of precedents are we setting, and what kind of democracy are we eventually practicing if we cannot interpret the laws as it is and we are coming up with these kinds of questionable verdicts?
The democracy we practice, unfortunately, has not matured. We call it nascent. But it's very unfortunate that after 26 years, we'll still be referring to our democracy as nascent. We expect that by now, following the rule of law and the legal practice, our democracy should at least be maturing. But unfortunately, it is not maturing. Politics is overbearing on democracy. Politics is overbearing on democracy, and that is why our democracy is not maturing. These politicians create the problems, and they expect the judiciary to solve such problems. They usually put the judiciary on the spot, and before you know it, all eyes will be on the judiciary. Before you know it, it is some politicians that will say go to court. These are cliches that have caused judiciary untold discomfort on account of the actions, inactions, commissions and omissions, and sometimes mischief by politicians. So we must separate governance from undue politicization. And my own advocacy is that judiciary being the hope of the common man, being the hope of Nigerian democracy, will always not only be firm and just as it has always tried to be, but also be timeous, because expedition of actions will help to solve problems. Leave them in the bud before they fester too much. Yes, I agree that the judges are overburdened by a lot of tasks, but when some tasks are more need more attention than others, we expect that they should be treated very, very timeously. That is the major thing that will help us in our march to democracy. And then the legislators will try as much as possible to make laws that will help the judiciary by ensuring that some of these actions and antics of politicians have some legislative sanctions that should go by way of dissuading the politicians from creating some of these problems that they are creating for the polity. The Nigerian society is expected to be moving faster than what is we are experiencing today, because the whole of Africa and the rest of the world is expecting Nigeria, the largest country, a black country in the world, to move faster than we are doing. And if we profess to practice civil democracy, we must practice it in truth and in honesty.
All right, and that's a fine place to leave the conversation. Fred Nzako, lawyer, public affairs analyst, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Many thanks.
Great.